Culpability. It's one of the most important terms when investigating the Holocaust and other similar events, and it's one of the core ideas behind Jonathan Glazer's latest film, The Zone of Interest. The film follows Rudolf Höss, commandant of the Auschwitz concentration camp. Höss lives with his wife and their 5 children in an idyllic garden home next to the camp. At first glance, this is perhaps one of the tamest Holocaust films out there. There are no shots situated inside the concentration camp and no acts of violence depicted on screen. While tame on paper, The Zone of Interest manages to capture some accurately horrifying moments. These moments would be normal in most movies about the Holocaust, but because the rest of the film is so restrained, these glimpses are heightened. The Zone of Interest is a slow film. Jonathan Glazer is a filmmaker who respects his audience and rarely gives exposition. As a viewer, you are forced to understand what is happening based on a few details given, and the Zone of Interest is perhaps his most vague. There's very little to go off of, and most of the film's themes are up for interpretation. Cuts are jarring and sometimes unexplainable. The Zone of Interest's editing turns the story into a dreamlike experience where time and reason quickly fade away. The sound of The Zone of Interest is perhaps the most important piece of the puzzle. Glazer's body of work is a strong reminder that film is an auditory medium as well as a visual one, and sound is the element that ties The Zone of Interest together. The sound editing acts independently from the visual editing, and the two often contradict one another. The film opens with several minutes of darkness with only the score and sounds of birdsong. This helps establish that this film is foremost a story told through sound. The score is the same type of alien droning found in Under the Skin, but with a darker, more nihilistic feel. Although the sound takes center stage, the cinematography isn't lagging behind by any means. Every frame is unique and builds a sense of space masterfully, especially when in the Höss's house. The drab colors slowly begin to hurt one's eyes, as even the dull interiors of the home are made violent and strange. A lot of the performances in The Zone of Interest rely primarily on extreme subtlety. Not much happens in The Zone of Interest. Things happen politically, characters move around, but not much actually happens. All of the characters are exactly the same at the end as they are in the beginning. They aren't given that many lines or that much to do. Kristen Fieldel is Rudolf Höss, and he imbues the man with such horrible mundanity. Rudolf is a boring man. He is not the sadists that so permeate our cultural consciousness of the Holocaust. He is just a man, and he is undoubtedly a monster, and he undoubtedly has a disturbed mind. But from what you can see, he is a family man, and this only makes his actions and his implied actions all the more horrifying. But the standout is Sandra Hüller as Rudolf Höss's wife. She's one of the few characters who really gets a chance to have some loud emotions, and Hüller makes you question your feelings about her character. And it is in the characters of the film that the question of culpability comes into play. Which characters are responsible for the events happening next door? Höss's wife? Their children? This is one of these questions that the film poses and that the characters themselves have to grasp with. Höss and his wife try to build a perfect home outside the camp, and this is a pretty clear representation of the German people in World War II, trying to ignore the events happening around them. But who is and is not responsible? Some people are clearly culpable while others are not. But there are thousands of people in a gray area, and their culpability is something that will likely always be up for debate. The Zone of Interest is a case study in author Hannah Arendt's idea of the banality of evil. Almost nothing evil is shown on the screen, but the film is blatantly about evil. Evil flows off of each frame of the film in a way that's hard to describe. Going into the concentration camp is treated the same as just going to work. The audience feels the horror of the Holocaust, but the characters rarely do. The most emotion Haas ever shows is when he is worried about his children swimming in a lake full of the runoff from the camp, and even then it's treated as a minor contamination problem, and the source of the contamination is never addressed or made to look like a concern. The problems that Haas is faced with are ones purely of maintenance. The lives of the prisoners at the camp aren't even talked about. The most we ever hear is the word bodies. The Zone of Interest is a decade-long project by Jonathan Glazer and is an example of meaning through mundanity. Like the 1957 film Jean Delman, the Zone of Interest presents events from a near-objective lens and doesn't try to find the drama in the story. Everything is presented the exact same, large, impactful events being given the exact same treatment as a silent dinner with the family. It leaves it up to you, even as the film descends into the void.